This video is sponsored by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, build your online presence with Squarespace. Hey everyone, I'm Ace of Clay and welcome to another sculpting video. If you're new here, I'm a sculptor and every week I make a new sculpture. Today we are in the Hidden World and you get to meet the nurse. If you're not familiar with the Hidden World, it is a universe of original characters that I have created and I'm sharing the next one with you today. Throughout this entire video, I will be sharing with you the nurse's backstory and lore, so make sure you watch the whole thing so you don't miss any details. And speaking of the Hidden World, Series 3 Hidden World trading cards have just hit the shop. This series in its entirety features 9 cards, new mutants, guides, all the wanderers are in this series, and 2 of the cards are chases. We've got Silly Willy, Mangle the Wanderer, Angor the Wanderer, Depremere the Wanderer, the Parasite, the Necromancer, Otto the Raccoon Guide, and the 2 chases are the 50-piece Butcher, Baker, and Candlestick Maker. This one is holographic. Again, there are only 50 of these cards in the entire release. And the Photographer's Briefcase. There are 100 of these in the entire release. So if you want to grab these, they are available now. This series will not be restocked. And brand new for this series, I have released a collector's guide that features all the cards that have been released from series 1, 2, and now 3, so you can check off the ones that you have acquired. And then on the back, I have a never before seen synopsis of the Hidden World. You can learn what the Hidden World's about, why it's there, what it means, why I keep making sculptures from it. It's all in this quick little synopsis to make everything makes sense. So if you want to grab this, you can add this onto your order. So head on over to aceofclay.com and grab yourself a couple packs of Series 3 before it's gone forever. Again, this is not going to be restocked. And now without further ado, let's meet the nurse. Alright, let's get started with the nurse's head. I'm balling up some aluminum foil and covering that in clay, and then we can start sculpting her details. In the eerie shadows of the Hidden World, a sinister figure roams the twisted landscapes, a figure known as the nurse. Originating from the Victorian era, her presence is marked by an unsettling monochromatic appearance, as if she had stepped out of an old black and white photograph. The only color on her entire form is the deep crimson blood that lines a stitch creating her mouth that wraps around her face, and a red cross on the band around her arm. Alright, now I'm just going to take my super poker and create the line for her mouth. It is going to stretch from ear to ear, and it's going to be one big, undone stitch. Now I'm just taking a tiny snake of clay and adding it around the edge. This is going to be her bottom lip of sorts, sort of like some swelling where the cut was made. And then we're going to repeat this for the upper lip area. Alright, now after detailing her mouth, we're just going to smooth things out a little bit and start adding some scars. Once everything's looking pretty good, we're going to pop on a chin and add some more scars. Once her face is looking pretty good, we're going to pop on some ears. If you want a more detailed ear tutorial, I actually have a video just dedicated to that. It's really old, but it gets the job done. If you want to check that out, it's somewhere on my channel. The nurse, once known as Alma Wright, was renowned for her exceptional skills in healing and her compassionate care in a renowned Victorian hospital. However, her life took a horrific turn during a terrible plague that swept through her city. The plague was relentless, claiming lives by the thousands, and in her desperation to save her patients, turned to forbidden practices. She began experimenting with dark alchemy, stitching the wounds of the dying with threads infused with magic. And now that her face is done, we can start her body. I've got my wooden plaque here with some holes drilled into it for my armature wire, and I'm going to start shaping out her right side and then mirror it to create the left, and then wrap it together with another piece of wire for her neck. Once the wire is all set, I'm going to brush on some Bacon Bond and start bulking out her torso with some Super Sculpey Ultralight. Now for her dress, because it's such a large piece, I'm going to bulk it out with some foil first and then add the ultralight on top of that just to conserve ultralight. And now that her underlying structure is complete, we're going to pop that in the oven, and then once it's baked and cooled down, we're going to cover it in clay. And once that layer of clay is on, we're going to start working on the details. Of course, we're going to add a bunch of folds and wrinkles all over her dress. I want it to look like it's sort of blowing off to the side, like there's a brisk wind. And if you're having trouble trying to make folds and wrinkles in your fabric like this, honestly, just take a sheet and throw it over a chair and see how the sheet reacts with the chair. Like where the folds are, you'll notice that they all sort of pull from the same area. So just make sure when you're applying these snakes of clay to create them, that you are putting them in places where they make sense. These stitches did more than just bind wounds. They began to bind the souls of the dying to their bodies, turning them into grotesque abominations caught between life and death. The nurse believed she was saving them, but in truth, she was creating a nightmare. As her experiments grew more extreme, her own body started to bear the marks of her dark practices. Scars marred her once beautiful face, and the very stitches she used on her patients were soon needed to keep her own body intact. Now I'm going to use some flexible clay to create her apron. I just want to shape it out in my hands first before applying it to her dress. And I'm just going to mess with it until it looks how I want. Once the apron's on and looking good, I'm just going to blend that top edge in with the rest of her before I add a band around her waist. Using my Super Poker, I'm going to create a sort of stretched fabric texture. Alright, now let's finish off our apron. And for the last step before I pre-bake this, I'm just going to brush on some Bacon Bond mixed with clay softener to smooth out the surface, remove fingerprints, and add a little bit of texture. And once she's baked and cooled down, she's looking pretty good. Let's start working on her arms. I just want to brush on some Bacon Bond really quick before I start adding my clay. And if you're having trouble with your clay sticking to wire, use some Bacon Bond. It's easier than wire wrapping. One fateful night, as a storm raged outside, Alma's experiments culminated in a catastrophic event. Her final attempt to cure the plague resulted in an explosion of dark energy, tearing a rift between her world and the hidden world. Sucked into the abyss, she found herself face to face with the entity, the all-powerful ruler of the hidden world. As you can see, we're giving her these nice, big, poofy sleeves. Alright, we're going to take a quick break from our video to talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you're a big business, a small business, a freelance designer, or a sculptor like me, Squarespace has everything you need to showcase your brand, sell your products, and more. I've been using Squarespace for over 5 years now, even before they started sponsoring me, and I could not be happier with my experience. Their products are so streamlined and so easy to use that managing my website, aceofclay.com, is truly a breeze. Some of my favorite features features include the portfolios and galleries. In my line of work, I have to share my work with the world, and Squarespace's beautiful portfolios allow me to do just that. I have an online shop where I can sell plushes, stickers, prints, sculpting supplies, and more. And Squarespace makes everything so easy, and I'm not kidding when I say that. I can track my inventory, print shipping labels, I get notification when something sells. Everything I need is right there in the platform. You can even sell digital downloads. They really have everything you need to start selling online. And at this day and age, if you're an online business, you've got to have a social media presence, and Squarespace allows you to integrate all of your social media into any page of your website. So if all of this sounds good, head on over to squarespace.com, start a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/aceofclay to save 10% on your purchase of a website or domain using my code ACEOFCLAY. Thanks again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. Now back to our sculpture. The entity, sensing the darkness within Alma and her twisted ambitions, saw an opportunity to mold her into one of its monstrous servants. With a wave of its hand, the entity transformed Alma into the nurse, amplifying her dark powers and sealing her fate. And once the sleeves are done, let's go ahead and work on her hands. I'm making these out of flexible clay as well. And we're just gonna pop that hand on with a little bit of Bacon Bond and blend it in, make sure it looks really good. And I did cut her arm wire a little too short, so I gotta poke her other hand in with some more wire. Now let's work our way down and give her some boots. And let's grab her head from earlier, add some Bacon Bond to that hole, and stick it on her neck. Like so. And I love how her pose turned out. Super creepy. Now I just want to finish off the unbaked areas with some Bacon Bond and clay softener again, and then get her in the oven. And once she's baked, I realized that I forgot to add the cross band on her one arm, so we're just going to add that now and then just pretend that we didn't forget. This would have been much easier on unbaked clay, but it's not the end of the world. The nurse is a haunting sight. She wears a long Victorian dress and apron. Her face is a patchwork of scars and stitches, with a long wound stretching from the sides of her face to form her mouth. Her eyes are cold and hollow, reflecting the torment of the soul she has trapped. Her hands, once gentle and skilled, are now claw-like, capable of both healing and inflicting unimaginable pain. And now it's time to add her hair. We're going to give her this sort of, I guess, Gibson girl type hairdo. We're just going to add that snake of clay there, blend in her hairline, and then bulk up the back and add a bunch of texture. And I apologize if my lighting is kind of weird in this video. That's because one of my lamps broke right while I started working, so I had to use an old lamp and it's not as bright. Now I just want to shape out the hair, get it into the style that I would like, and then make sure it's all nice and smooth before I start adding the hair texture to it. Now let's go ahead and add that hair texture with our Explorer tool. The nurse's powers are as twisted as her appearance. She has the ability to suture wounds with her cursed threads, but instead of healing, the stitches prolong suffering, keeping her victims in a state of perpetual agony. Her knowledge of dark alchemy allows her to create potions and elixirs that can both heal and harm, making her a master of twisted medical arts. After popping on her bun, we're going to go ahead and make her old-fashioned nurse's hat. I was originally going to give her one of those like standard nurse's hats with like the cross on it, but I saw some pictures of Victorian nurses wearing these kinds of hats, and I thought these were a little more unique. Now we're just going to do a couple touch-ups here and there and then smooth everything out with some more clay softener. And just like that, she's ready for her final bake. And now it's time to paint. Using my airbrush, I'm going to paint the entire thing dark gray to give her a nice primer coat. I'm using my airbrush because I want her to look kind of ghostly. I don't want her to look like she's like a physical person that's there, even though she is. I want her to be very like ethereal. And like I mentioned in the story portions, she is completely monochromatic. She's going to be just black and white, like she popped out of a silent film. So we're just going to start with this darker base, add some shadows here with a dark grayish brown color, and then we're going to build up the highlights. The nurse prowls the hidden world, drawn to the wounded and the dying. She offers her healing services to those in despair, but her help comes at a terrible price. Those who accept her aid and find themselves bound to her will, their bodies marked by her magic, their souls trapped in an eternal nightmare. She uses her puppets to spread fear and chaos, extending her influence across the realm. If you're really careful, you can be pretty precise with an airbrush. You don't need to tape things off all the time. And I found that out with her because like I'm able to just like target her face with the lighter color and it didn't really go anywhere else. So that's cool. You can always go in later and tighten things up with a paintbrush, which I'm going to do. But yeah, fun fact. And then I'm just darkening some areas on her face here, getting the circles around her eyes nice and dark brown and black. And we're just rolling with it. Now using a paintbrush, we're going to paint her white mutant eyes and go in and add little details here and there. The nurse's ultimate goal is to perfect her dark art, to find a way to stitch herself back into the living world and exact revenge on those she blames for her downfall. She seeks the hearts of the pure and the souls of the brave, believing that their essence will provide the final ingredient needed to complete her dark ritual. Using my round brush, I'm going to take a color palette that is very similar to what I already sprayed on her face, and I'm going to create some lines and texture with the paint. Make her look extra spooky. And I'm really just going in everywhere and darkening the darks and lightening the lights. So we're just being very patient. This painting process takes, I want to say, double the amount of time as my normal one, but I think it's worth it. The nurse's legend is a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the horrific consequences of defying the natural order. Her presence in the hidden world is a symbol of eternal suffering and unending torment. Survivors speak of a way to defeat her, but to do so requires facing her in the heart of her domain, a task few are brave enough to attempt. Until then, the nurse continues her grim work, a monochromatic specter of pain and suffering, forever haunting the twisted corridors of the hidden world. And that's the story of the nurse. Now I just want to paint her base. If you made it this far in the video, just want to announce that I will be selling these bases with and without pre-drilled holes soon. So this is one of the ones with the pre-drilled holes, and it's so much nicer than the ones from the craft store. Now let's pop her back in and say it with me. And she's done! The nurse is complete. Let me know what you think of her in the comments. The nurse has definitely been a long time coming. She was one of the original mutants that I wanted to create, but I never got around to making her for some reason. I really don't know why. I think the week that I was gonna make the nurse, I actually made the seamstress, and I'm not mad about that because I love the seamstress and I know a lot of you do too, but I think the nurse is cool. She's changed a little bit from my original design that I had in my head, but I'm really happy with how she turned out. I'm really happy with how all of these mutants, except maybe the tattooist, have turned out this year. So again, let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok at Ace of Clay. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.